Hey, good morning, Patriots. It's time to get up, get going, and do the hard work of saving the Republic. It's good to see y'all. I think you can see me. I'm going to check to make sure everything's functioning. As you guys know, I'm solo this week, not by choice, just saying. Nothing is anything wrong with that. It's just that obviously we've had some challenges this week that we've worked through, and we continue to persevere. I was just talking about perseverance last night with a close friend. Some might say that you know one must work to overcome any circumstance that gets in your way, no matter what. I think there was a movie about that. Clint Eastwood, uh, overcome, persevere. God, I always get that quote messed up. Any case, we're here this morning. Thank you for being here. We love y'all. We're going to have a good program this morning. We're going to have James Stack. I hope I'm getting his last name right here in a few minutes joining us, and then my friend Brigadier General Blaine Holt. We can't show his face because he's in witness protection program. No, that's not true. He's actually under contract to Newsmax, so apparently his face has been copyrighted by Chris Ruddy. So I don't know how that works. I didn't ask questions. You just let that stuff go. Anyway, we'll be talking to Blaine later this morning about all these different national security things and this, that, and the other. So, and also there's a lot to go through this morning. So, just to kind of give you a heads up, we're going to hit Jack Smith. Well, I'm not going to hit him. I'd probably get in a lot of trouble. I'm always in trouble, but I get in real trouble then if I hit him. But we will address him. How about that? And then Zuckerberg, what's up with Data? Lieutenant Data, all grown up and running his own corporation. That's pretty incredible when you think about androids being able to function in that level. So, Mr. Android himself has come clean about some of the shenanigans. We'll talk about that. Afghanistan. We'll be going through a lot on Afghanistan this morning. First thing with James, we want to talk about the dishonor shown by the Biden administration to veterans, which is unfortunately their hallmark at this point. Quick change. I don't know if it's a. Oh yes, yes. Quick change. Yes, yes. Quick change because I was on Newsmax. Let me address that. Anyway, so yes, I was just on Newsmax with Blaine Holt. There you go. They get see he was on Newsmax with me, and you could see his face because Newsmax is owned by Chris Ruddy. Chris, I guess, has the copyright on Blaine's face, so it works out that way. I guess what do I know? I'm not a business guy. I've pretended to be a business guy before, but I'm not one. But thank you for that observation. It's good that you're paying attention. It's important to pay attention to these things. Anyway, let me continue with my list of frivolity that we'll be talking about. Harris Waltz. That sounds like a Vietnamese. Is that like a dance you would do in Austria in 1933? That could mean something. You'd be waltzing around with a Harris, contemplating world domination, trying to impose your version of social order on the world. Who would have tried that back in 1933, 34? I wonder about that, but they're going to go on and be interviewed by CNN. It might as well be interviewed by an eighth grade debate team. It's just unbelievable. And of course, Tulsi and RFK. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Tulsi, you all know Tulsi has made a transition, not that kind of transition. She left her party, and I'd leave the party too. Apparently, the hors d'oeuvres were bad over there. I mean, they were always serving spam and crackers. And who wants to go to a party with Nancy Pelosi with spam and crackers? As a matter of fact, real quick, could you imagine going to a party with Nancy Pelosi? I mean, let's picture this for a second. Tulsi Gabbard. I'm not making fun of Tulsi. Tulsi and I are friends, but I'm saying, could you imagine Tulsi Gabbard, someone who actually loves America, serves the military? She's lieutenant colonel in the reserves. I think she's still got a command. She's still in command in Colorado, I think. And going to a party with Nancy Pelosi. Could you imagine that? It's like, first off, getting past, you probably, if you get close to her, she probably has little pieces of potted meat still in her mouth just from her, feasting on that. Because I think she probably gets like these hunger pangs from drinking all that vodka. I don't know what it's like to drink 2 quarts of vodka a day, but I'm sure it's tough to be around Nancy because, you've got that vodka odor. It's like she's like a walking surgical room because it's kind of like if you go to a hospital, you got to kind of get that antiseptic smell, that alcohol smell. Well, Nancy kind of has that, but it has a slight odor of rotted meat from the potted meat. See, it's kind of a bad thing. It's really. But my point is, can you imagine being Tulsi and having to go to that party, to be in a party with that sort of thing? I can't imagine it. It's pretty bad. I mean, look, Republicans aren't perfect. I used to go to the Capitol Hill Club to meet with members of Congress. Capitol Hill Club is the Republican club right next to Capitol Hill on the House side. And yeah, I mean, John Boehner would be walking around a little bit, tipsy. I guess I can use that word, talking to folks. So, nobody's perfect, but he didn't have potted meat in his mouth and he didn't smell like a brewery. Well, he didn't smell much like a brewery anyway, just saying. But anyway, I digress. I'm just trying to get my act together here. So anyway, Chris Cordani is still off at Ed McMahon School. I understand he survived the clown shoe and vodka event. He did not drown on the beach. Apparently, I'm learning something every day. So apparently, when you go to Ed McMahon School, they put you on a beach and they make you drink half a quart of vodka, and it's based on body size. Chris is not like a 6'5" guy, so he had to like drink only a half a quart, and then they make you wear these clown shoes and run half a mile across the beach. And if you can do that during high tide and not drown, well, you've passed an event. This is like kind of like a Survivor for sidekicks. And God bless Chris for surviving that. And I understand you do it like at 11 o'clock at night, so you kind of get that heyo vibe going. You gotta do that, and you got to say heyo 10 times as you go, and be clear about it. So God bless Chris for doing it. I can't believe he's stepping up, going to sidekick school for me like that. But there you are. So keep in mind that Chris will be back. I think this coming Monday. So anyway, with that said, I'm trying to think. There's anything else regarding admin we have to cover. So anyway, Larry Schreiker will be here tomorrow. Larry, my good friend from University of Dayton, he'll go through, and of course, the girls will be here Friday to do their thing on their own, unsupervised. Unsupervised always like sends chills up my back. It's like, really, you're going to have people do something unsupervised? It's like my son is he's coming up on 18, and anytime I send him somewhere, I'm always wondering about what's going on. So just saying. Anyway, I hope you got your coffee. I've got mine. Let's get into it. So James, I see James is in the waiting room, not Darwin's waiting room, but he's in the waiting room. See, the Democrats have Darwin's waiting room, and it didn't go well for Democrats. But we're not Democrats, are we? So here we go. Bringing in James. Good morning, James. Welcome to Wake Up Patriots.
Morning, Tony. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. So obviously you're part of your flag store. We're going to have you talk a little bit about that. Obviously, one of the things that's we're celebrating. Well, celebrating is the wrong word, and I don't mean to diminish that. We are acknowledging and frankly horrified by the anniversary of the third year anniversary of the abandonment of Afghanistan by Team Biden. And I want to go through that a little bit with you today. But first off, let's just talk about you and your organization. So tell the good folks about who you are and what you do.
Well, we make rustic, solid wood American flags. Our business was kind of founded by my son in a way. He came up with the idea, and my wife and I went with it. He was 6 years old when he asked if he could start a business making American flags with me and his mom. And the last 7 years, we've been doing that. We never would have thought that it would have lasted this long and become what it's
Yeah.
become. A couple years ago, 3 years ago exactly, we were canceled for making our flags. And the last 3 years, we've just been kind of fighting to get back to a state of normalcy. And in doing that, we also realized that a lot of other people, after we went on the news once or twice, we started getting a lot of phone calls from other people that were experiencing similar or the same things at us. So we realized that something needed to be done about it. And I was really fortunate to be able to go on to Newsmax and Fox News and stuff and kind of have a little bit of a platform. So I decided to take that and try to see if we could get legislation started here in Tennessee to begin with, that would end cancel culture here. We have one bill already up for a vote this February, I believe,
Yeah.
that will make it's an anti-debanking bill that would make what PayPal did to us basically an arbitrary holding of money without any type of law being broken or the traditional ways of. I mean, we're not advocating at all that banks or the government shouldn't be able to hold money. It should just go through the normal channels it's always been, like if you're drug dealing
Well,
or.
I don't think they should hold money. No, I'm against any of that nonsense, but I appreciate the
Well, I
fact
mean,
you're trying to play
if
within the
they're
rules.
if they're involved in something horrible, drug dealing, child sex trafficking, all of those kinds of things, go tell
Yeah.
a judge, present your evidence to a judge, and get the
Get a
judge
warrant. Right.
to sign
Get a
off on
warrant.
it. And
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. But just because they don't like me or don't like what I say or don't like my politics or anything like that, it's absolutely insane. So the bill addresses that kind of thing, so that
Yeah.
the entrepreneurs can go about there and chase their American dream like we're doing.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit because I'm going to kind of do an audible here, and I'm going to go to Tim Walls real quick because part of the issue has been regarding. Well, we'll talk about him a little bit because I have a number of things I want to touch on him. Well, I wouldn't touch on him. Just saying,
Please
I'm
don't.
not. I'm not that kind of person. But nothing. If you're that person, fine. Nobody cares. Just go do what you want. Just don't tell us about it, especially with Tim. Anyway, back to Tim. So he has made public comments that we do not have a quote unquote absolute right to free speech. That is not true. And secondly, he's actually done things to disenfranchise his citizens who didn't agree with his policies, to include sending National Guard teams through neighborhoods, paintballing them for being out on their own porch during COVID. Who does that sort of thing? I mean, this is crazy. And there's tapes of it out there. And of course, the mainstream media ain't addressing much of it yet, which is kind of okay. I hope they get to it. But my concern is this, and you've touched upon it. How do we deal with a state or federal government that decides, James, I don't like what you stand for. You like today, your patriotism reminds me of my personal failures. I'm speaking as Biden now. I guess I should speak in, more slowly and less accurately, but
And don't
I
finish.
digress. Yeah. So, but my point being is that you represent an interest, a movement, and images that I don't patriotism. Oh, patriotism. Ooh. How do we deal with that sort of thing? Because it's one thing to have a political party like the Democrats say we don't agree with that. It's another thing to have them essentially take control of the mechanisms and levers of government to use it against us. So how do we deal with that?
Well, my personal view is that I think that Democrats, the way that they operate, are just like the typical schoolyard bully. As long
Yeah.
as you are ignore them or allow them to get away with it, they're going to do it, and they're not just going to do it; they're just going to keep on ramping it up and ramping it up. So, unfortunately, I think that our Republican nature to be conservative and kind of stay quiet and fight the good fight has been really used against us. As long as we're sitting down and just trying to reason with people and maybe have just a reasonable argument or discussion, we're going to lose. We have to. It's really sad. We've gotten to this point where the only way we're going to win is if we fight like them,
Yeah,
and that means that
I agree.
we got to stand tall. I really hope we don't have to get to the point where we have to be dirty and we're not, and certainly not lie like those guys do. But we definitely have to stand up. We have to stand tall. We have to be very firm. And we've gotten past the point, I believe, where we can compromise. We just can't do it anymore. When you compromise with them, it's one step towards what they really want, and they're just not going to. I mean, they're communists. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same
Oh, it
thing.
is.
A minute ago, you just said, "Hey, who would send the National Guard through and paintballing people on their porches?" Well, communists. That's who do that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah.
communists
Clearly.
have this very long game, and as long as you let them take an inch, an inch, an inch, they're playing 100-year game. So we can't let them have an inch. So we have to
Yeah.
stand up. We have to stand strong. We have to push back very, very hard without going against our principles. We can't lie. We can't exaggerate. We can't start talking about mistruths and all that nonsense. We just have to come with, and the good thing is that we have the facts on our side and we have history on our side. So all we have to do is just stand firm with those things. And I believe the other part of that is that this has been going on, cancel culture and this whole thing that's been going on. It's not been the last since Joe Biden.
Oh,
It
yeah.
hasn't been the last 10, 15 or 20 years. It's been about probably close to 40 years. It started when I was in high school. I used to get kicked out of my class for disagreeing with the teacher about everything. He would complain about Reagan this and Reagan that. And I would use our own textbook. He said that Reagan spent all this money. I pointed out in the textbook that Congress spends the money, not Reagan. And Congress at that time were Democrats. He threw me out of the class. That was
Yeah.
35 years ago. And that wasn't the beginning of it then. So this has been a very long fight that they've been fighting, and they've made a lot of ground. So we've got to do the same thing, and we have to expect to go into this for a very long fight. It's going to take that long. Luckily, we have someone like President Trump that I think that can probably shorten that time because of how smart he is, how nobody can make a deal like that guy. Nobody. So
No, I we were talking yesterday about him being able to make a deal, cut a deal. I mean, he comes out of one of the most difficult business environments in the world, New York City,
yeah.
and to prevail in that environment, to be successful in creating businesses and buildings is significant. And for the record, I used to get kicked out of high school, my classes too, but it was mostly for blowing up the chemistry lab because who did you know that mothballs can liquefy and burst into flame quickly? I didn't know that, and I found out the hard way. It's like, man, that didn't go like I thought. Anyway, back to and by the way, it was the 1970s, so it was a lot different back then. And I was in a foreign country in Lisbon, Portugal, so it was different. But the counterculture thing is real, and I have a number of celebrity friends. Some are publicly acknowledged that we're friends. Some others were private. Bob Hayes, star of Airplane. Bob and I are close friends. He has no problem with that. Other members of Hollywood who I can't name them, but they're probably watching, are a little bit more reluctant to speak out on this because of the very thing you just said. Counterculture is real, and especially in Hollywood. I mean, you talk about a town based on dreams. Well, some would say nightmares, depending on if you were a Harvey Weinstein client. But I'm just saying that it's pervasive, and this affects not only us at the individual level. I mean, you've been victimized by it. I got victimized by it. I lost jobs and contracts when I was the national security advisor of the Trump 2020 campaign because political beliefs. Well, I still believe what I did. I wasn't going to change my beliefs, but it's very clear that in the larger culture, you still get left wing products from Hollywood because the predominant the predominantly left wing leaders still run it. And I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn here and talk about Disney because Disney has become essentially a center. It's like if Darth Vader had a company, it would be Disney, and because they are that evil. And as a matter of fact, they bought Star Wars a few years ago, running into the ground. They actually had this Leslie Headland, who was Harvey Weinstein's personal assistant, for God's sake. They gave her $128 million to go out and make something called The Acolyte, and it failed miserably. As a matter of fact, it made it through one season. It was canceled. It's like, yeah, we're not doing this. And of course, the left, the woke left's going nuts. Like, oh my God, I can't believe you're giving in to the council to the toxic fan base. Like, no, you have a fan base, and they didn't like it because it was woke. And you had Leslie Headland, who was the ultimate maverick of woke, who worked for Harvey Weinstein. Just saying, working for the Darth Vader of the industry right now, Disney. So we not only have to work at the local level like you're doing and go and stand up and try to counter what they're doing. We have to get our leaders and people in Hollywood start paying attention to what's going on as well, because it has to be across the board. It has to be at our level, it has to be at the mid level, and it has to be at the top level, because I think it's not just about left or right, it's about right or wrong. And most people are just fed up, right? I mean, James, people are just fed up with being pushed this agenda.
I agree. I think that they've been shoving down their agenda down our throats for a long time. In the
Yeah,
beginning, they were gentle about it, kind of spoon
yeah,
feeding, and we've gotten to the point where they're literally just shoving it down our throats, and eat it, choke on it. They don't care. They just want to get what they've done. I mean, when I was in high school, it was the whole Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky thing. I would sit there in the class and I would just listen to how the teachers were spinning that. And that's when it really dawned on me that when this whole thing really started. And back then, it really wasn't a soft push, but it wasn't a hard push. I never would have thought in a million years that I would be sitting in a position where I'm making American flags, that the company was a 6-year-old boy's idea, and I'm getting pushed out, and my marketing's being pulled down, my bank account's being frozen. I mean, they took
unbelievable.
$110,000 of our money. To some people, that's not a lot of money. That is a lot of
That's a
money
lot of
to
money.
my
That's a
family,
lot of money.
and it
Yeah,
it nearly bankrupted us. Trying to explain, a little boy who's watched his mom and dad build this little business. I mean, my son loves going to school and telling his teacher that he's my wife and my boss, and he gets a kick out of it. So, having to explain to him, "Daddy, why," when he would ask us, "Daddy, why don't they like us?" Try to explain that to at the time, a 9-year-old boy, why part of our country, half of our country, is wanting us to get shut down because we're making an American flag. That's a very tough thing to put in. It's very difficult to explain to a young kid. And the fact that parents all across this country even have to explain something that to their children it should scare it should really scare people. But it's not.
yeah.
I mean, it's just they just keep on pushing and pushing and pushing. I mean, to the point, I mean, 20 years ago, if you said that, hey, in 20 years, there's going to be a president that's falling up steps, falling down steps, falling off of his bike, can't finish a sentence, just rambling all over the place, and he's going to be president, I think that people would have just said, James, you're absolutely crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. But here we are. This is what
Yeah.
happened. And then for them to basically do a soft coup that they've done and not
Oh,
acknowledge that it's a soft
it was a
coup,
coup. Yeah.
it's just unbelievable. So, don't try to predict. I mean, when a cartoon like South Park becomes kind of a crystal ball into the future, people, we got problems. We got big problems.
So, well, before that, The Simpsons, but The Simpsons seem to be in some ways, I don't know if better is the right word, but they were more funny in many ways than the mainstream media about how they presented the future. And I want to talk about that for a second because I'm going to go back to the current uh, mindless duo of Harrison and Waltz. So, as at the time we're speaking, word is that there will be a 10 September debate on ABC between President Trump and Vice President Harris. And it's interesting because they'd agreed upon the basic groundwork. The basic groundworks are going to be the same as the the debacle of Joe Biden's initial debate. That was like that to me is going to be go down in history as one of the greatest debates ever because not so much for the content. The content was fabulous, but the outcome of that debate was actually the removal of the incumbent from the race. That's what ended up happening, by the way. And Trump correctly says, "Well, we beat Joe Biden." He did. That debate had a lot to do with it. But my point is that the basic rules that they established for that will be the rules in place for Kamala Harris. And one of the notable changes that Kamala Harris decided they wanted 2 weeks before the debate is, well, I need to have notes. James, can you imagine? It's like I gotta have like my own cheating notes so I know what to say. Can you imagine? I mean, Trump addressed this yesterday at a press conference in Northern Virginia. He was there at Eden Village, a Vietnamese village, which is I've been there, a great place in Fairfax County in Falls Church, I think. And he said, "I don't need notes. You prepare for debates your entire life. It's kind of the summary of who you are and what you know. You may like do a little practice on a couple of niceties, but you know what you know when you go in with that. So what do you make of Kamala Harris asking for the ability to have notes at the debate?
I think it's nuts. I was on the debate team in high school, and we weren't allowed to take notes in high school. Kids were
Yeah,
expected to
I
know your
know.
material and know your stuff better.
I know exactly.
And now, okay, so if she has a meeting with other world leaders, can she say, "Hey, I want to bring in my notes"? I mean, can she just have a cordial conversation with people, a productive conversation, or is she going to have notes? Is she going to have? I mean, what? How does that? Uh, if you're not up to date on all the information, and you can if you can't keep it in your head and have it, readily available in your mind,
Yeah.
well, maybe she's a little step closer to Biden than all of us know. I'm not really suggesting that, but why the need to have the notes? Can't you
Yeah.
just have an honest conversation or debate with another person based on what you know to be true, not what someone has prepared, all these talking points and these and just let's be clear, it's not going to be little notes of fact that she can reference so she gets a date right or maybe a dollar amount
No,
right or something
no.
like that. It's going to be talking points. Hey,
Oh,
they
yeah.
asked this, obfuscate away, talk about this, spin it up, put it back onto Trump on a completely different thing. And that's what the whole thing. It's going to be a carefully crafted cheat sheet. Let's not call it
Yeah.
note. It's going to be a cheat sheet
Yeah,
of
of course.
he says this, you say this. He says this, you say that. Moderator asks this, you spin it and put it on. That's all it's going to be. It's just going to be a
I
big
know.
old spin factory.
I encourage people to go back and look at her debate with Vice President Pence because the big tagline came out of like, "I'm speaking." It's like during the if you watch, it's like Trump wasn't. I mean, Pence wasn't saying anything. So Pence actually had this like the dog, like, huh? What are you talking about? Not even talking over you. I'm speaking, Mr. Vice President. It's like, what? So she did that purposely, to your point, to create a moment. It was a moment where she used being a woman. I'm speaking, Mr. Vice President, to actually create a perception that she was being put upon it. Oh, woe is little old me by this big brute. And by the way, just for the record, I've met Vice President Pence. He's not a brute. He's kind of a wimp, to be honest with you. So it's kind of like, okay, there you go. But anyway, I digress. I don't want to go down that path. I will get in trouble. Just saying. Anyway, back to the topic of Kamala. So it would be to do what you're talking about, to have preset. Can I say pre-chewed food? It's like she's going to have pre-chewed answers. Like, that's good spam. We were talking about spam earlier, so but she's going to have that all ready to go, and it's not going to be substantive. It's going to be indicative of who she is, which is fake. It would be all fake. It would be ready to go, kind of prefab answers, and would simply be there for her to use to try to get essentially perception points because she's not going to get any real points. She's not going to know the facts. But I wouldn't put it past her. But at this point, as I understand it, she doesn't get the notes, and it's gonna be hilarious to see what she comes up with or doesn't come up with as she goes through and has to actually answer questions. Along that same line of thinking, James, I noticed that so much of what she and Waltz are doing is trying to portray them as a team that answers everything for all people. And let me explain that. Tim Walz is supposed to be Minnesota nice, oofta. And I've spent some time in Minnesota, and I can tell you that the people I hang out with in Minnesota were very cool. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell a story on myself. I used to fly back from the Far East on spy missions, and one of the places I'd come back and stay a couple of days is Detroit. Besides Detroit, you fly through Detroit or Minneapolis as the gateway back from Japan or Korea, and I'd hang out in uptown Minneapolis with my lesbian friends. They were great. They like what I like. It was fun, and Minneapolis was a fun city. It was really cool. A lot of cool people. Prince was alive back then. Uh, uh, he had a place called Glam Slam. It was like everybody could be who they wanted. It was chill. Well, Tim Walsh destroyed all that. He basically turned Minneapolis into little Somalia. And I'm not joking about that. People have crime all over the place. So he literally He's not Minnesota nice. He's Idi Amin nasty, as far as I'm concerned, because he's literally taken the third world and grafted it onto the city of Minneapolis. And so he's supposed to be, oh, he's just that guy that's next door you could always borrow a shovel from. It's like, no, he's the John Wayne Gacy who would be taking that shovel and burying people in his crawl spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got that vibe going. And you got Kamala, who I don't think she's had a sincere thought since she was probably about 18 or 19. Maybe when she was out there doing dance stuff. But we're supposed to believe, James, that these people represent the best of the United States. Do you believe that?
Oh God, gosh. Well, the best meaning the worst, the best of the ridiculous.
Best of the bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they there's no competition for them there. I mean, Kamala, I used to live in California, so I mean, I know what that state. My parents moved from Maryland in I think 1977. I was 3 years old, and at that point, California was literally probably one of the most beautiful places to raise a family in the world. Not the country, but the world. And in my lifetime, I watched my home state go from just a beautiful state where we could ride. I mean, I used to, at 10 years old, I used to ride my bike miles away from my parents didn't know that, but I would ride my bike miles away.
Yes, I did things like that too. Yeah.
I'd go all the way down to the beach and run around in the waves and everything like that. Come home smelling like seawater. My mom and dad, just I was a good kid. So, but literally running amok without a worry in the world. And today, there's no way I would let my kids, if we lived there, we left because of the chaos. And a lot of the reason, because I didn't feel like my kids were safe. I didn't feel like my wife was safe. My wife wanted to go out, night on the town with her friends and stuff. I would be in panic because we've had friends who've been assaulted. We've had, your car gets broken into. California is basically a war zone. And when I lived in a rural part of San Diego, up by Palomar Mountain, a little town called Valley Center. And when the people in the sticks start getting worried about going down into town, I mean, gosh, how many different indicators do you need to see before you realize that you're on the wrong path? And California, while all the people, I mean, and I'm sure you know, Tony, but California is run by San Francisco and LA. Everybody else, every other county is a conservative county, especially the middle of California, Bakersfield, and all the farmland and everything.
I
These are
know.
hardcore, Republicans. They're as red can be. And the Democrats have completely destroyed the state. I don't know how many people, I don't know the exact number of how many people are leaving, but when we drove our family, our home, and our business across country, we passed probably a dozen people with signs in the car leaving California. It was all over. We saw one billboard in Texas. I guess some rich guy pulled out a billboard, said, if you're on I-40 coming from California, keep on going. I mean, everybody knows what's going on what's been going on in California. It's absolutely insane.
I spent some time in Northern California, a place called Weed. And it's like up in there, the redwoods, beautiful part of the nation, and they all hate their government. And these are lefties. These are hippies. It's like, we hate, and it's like they make no bones about it. They hate the left. I mean, they're the left, but they hate the left because they're not. It's like it's. Let me explain this. I want to be clear. There are folks on the left who want freedom, who want to be just left alone and be happy. Well, that used to be kind of the left's brand. It's like, oh yeah, everybody get along. Now you have today's left, like Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris. This is the totalitarian left. This is the Stalin left. This is the left that gives you a little book and makes you recite from it. And if you don't recite properly, you've lost your bank account, you've lost your family, and you're off in a gulag somewhere breaking stones or making Apple iPhones. Oh, is that related? Well, probably. So just saying. So it's really bad. Anyway, we got to bring in my good friend, my dear friend, Brigadier General Blaine Holt. Let's see if he's ready. Hey, good morning, General Holt.
Sir.
Are you there? Good morning. So I told the good folks earlier that Chris Ruddy copyrighted your face, and basically, you got to be careful about that because we don't want to violate any copyright requirements.
Nope, Newsmax owns my face. Sorry about that.
Well, anyway, we got James on. We've been talking about his Your American Flag store, and of course, my friend Brigadier General Blaine Holt is a friend and colleague. We're on Newsmax, and he's joining us now for the conversation we're having regarding the wacky left. And it's not the wacky left like your uncle who always forgets his keys, and you have to go get that thing you break into cars to get him out because he locked him in his car. It's not that kind of uncle. We're talking about the kind of uncle, as we talked about, Blaine, who goes wants to borrow your shovel, and next thing you know, he's burying kids in his basement. That's the kind of Tim Walz crazy uncle we're talking about.
Oh yeah,
and it's just nuts that we now see this Orwellian effort to make him look Minnesota nice, don't you know? Oofta, and her to be did you know that she put her overalls on, Blaine, yesterday and wants to build a border wall now? Can you imagine that?
No.
I mean,
yeah. She's probably going to make up a new phrase like "Make America Great Again."
Yeah, I know. And then, can you imagine her in that World War II? We can do it, like pose with her arm up, and with her face on that. And she does other things too. We should probably bring in Willie Brown and ask about those things. But I don't want to do that now. I don't want to do that because that would get us down a path. But Blaine, I did want to ask you, since we've been talking about military stuff, this whole issue regarding Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
That yesterday they refused to say anything about the failure that they did. And let me lay this out clearly because I was part of the conversation when the planning was done. The Trump plan, was the reconciliation, and ultimately this was the only path forward, the reconciliation of the Taliban and the Afghan government. They were going to put those two organizations back together and allow them to have a coalition government to begin basically running Afghanistan. And this was a conditions-based transfer of power over 6 months. That's not what Joe Biden did he, Blaine?
Nope. It's, we're in a lot of trouble now because of their political desire to say we ended Afghanistan before the 20-year point. And it just didn't matter to them anymore about any part of logic or any part of, well, the Taliban didn't keep their end of the deal. Ghani's government is too weak to assume control. The Afghan National Army is still not ready, even though we dumped gajillions of dollars into them to try to teach them how to fly a couple of hip helicopters and a dog named Rex. And we just have nothing but a hot mess. As I'm talking to you both, I'm still trying to get Afghans out of Afghanistan and Pakistan who served and stood by us. And the State Department still remains into their little box of, well, unless we have blessed you with the letters SIV or P1 or P2, you won't be leaving anytime soon, and you're the Taliban's mess. But let's see what 20 years of blood and treasure and got us. We have now a Taliban that is stronger than they were before, that they have better kit, certainly with what we left behind, than they were before. And then you listen to generals at that time who then would go on to get promoted for this malfeasance. And I said malfeasance for a reason, that, oh, no, we destroyed all those things. Well, let me tell you something. How do you think that all those little birds, the helicopters, got shot up by our people, and they shot up the avionics, and now they're all flying with brand new canopies, brand new Garmin glass cockpits, because there's another country involved here that this administration refuses to recognize, but it's one that Tim Walz would understand so very well. It's the People's Republic of China. And China moved in. They took our base, the one we spent the most money for ever. They operate out of there. They conduct bioweapons experiments there, and then infest cats and send them here and dogs and send them here to the United States. And they work with the Taliban. They've reactivated the supply chain. Their factories are making MD-530H canopies, and they've put every single thing like they had back on the road. On their big parade, we saw them fly their stupid C-130. Now, this ought to be And then we sit back and we look at all of the vets who watch this with astonishment, and we wonder, why are we having retention and recruitment problems in the military? And so I think, and I was listening to your conversation, you've got to come back to this Chinese love of communism that these people have, and they think it's going to be okay because they're the ones in power, and they watch how the CCP has enriched themselves. They just want to be the CCP here in the United States, and they're willing to work with the CCP, and yes, I will say it, the World Economic Forum at the exact same time, declare a new world order, and we'll all just play games and play along. But, those of us who fought these wars for 20 years were pretty smart. And we read the book by Heinlein, Starship Troopers, and we can see with our own eyes what's going on. We can be disgusted as we watch veterans still on active duty prostituting themselves, avoiding their oaths and looking the other way. How many people resigned as a result of what we saw in Afghanistan?
Not a one.
Zero. Stu Scheller's the one who paid the price for everybody, and he was in the right every step of the way. So there is my opening round soapbox rant. I'll finish with I love youramericanflagstore.com and everything James Stackey does. And there, I have said it.
Well, there you go.
That's
a great endorsement. Thank you. Well, let's walk through that a little bit. So I testified. I don't know if you knew this, Blaine. I testified at Stu Schiller's court-martial. I was a witness for the defense saying he was a whistleblower. He's the only kid. He's the only one who said, hey, there's something wrong here.
Right.
I mean, it's like that was that nuts. It's like I got called in by his defense team. It's like, are you willing? It's like, of course. It's like, can you address the fact that we feel he's a whistleblower? Of course, he's a whistleblower. I mean, it's obvious. Like it was a catastrophic failure. Everybody's trying to say, oh, this was wonderful. Oh, we did a wonderful job. But I want to hit that real quick, Blaine, because I've taught some classes at the Army War College, and my friend. Major General retired Tony Kukolo. General Kukolo is retired now. Did you know Tony? I don't know if I think I
did. We've met a couple of times.
So Tony and I were in combat when he was a lieutenant colonel and I was a major in Afghanistan. Oh, guess who our boss was? A guy named Lloyd Austin, Brigadier General. Imagine that. And somehow, people like Austin, who should be the first guy to say, man, did I screw this up? I was there and I could have made better choices. Come on. He knew, as we knew now, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole. Bagram, if you're going to do an evacuation, Bagram's a place to do it.
Yeah.
It's remote. You have huge infrastructure. I mean, talk about a military base that was well protected and able to handle whatever came. You don't want to be stuck in an urban environment where you have limited options, limited avenues of approach, literally tens of thousands of people clogging small roads. Yeah, that's no way to do it. And yet somehow we're supposed to believe, it was just fine. And
they wouldn't even let our sniper drop the guy who was going to kill 13 Americans. They wouldn't even do that. I've never seen a group of flag officers more hapless. And here's the thing. What we get is the second somebody rightfully throws a rock at those clowns, then what they do is they wrap themselves up in red, white, and blue and say, oh, well, this general in Iraq got shot up, and so he's really great. And it's like, okay, you took on some lead in your body and you survived it. Thank you very much. I salute you for that. But I also can parse the fact that you totally threw your moral courage into the sewer on that day when Kabul fell. I can totally. What about the vanity of one clown officer who, the last soldier leaving Afghanistan, and it was, I know this because I'm a C-17 guy, that photo looking through nogs at that general officer walking up the ramp, it was staged. It was staged. Yeah. In fact, that clown wanted 3 takes. So says the C-17 crew to me. The C-17 crew said to me, 3 takes before he saw the picture that was going to be his last soldier leaving Afghanistan moment as we're leaving out of a disgusting defeat. Now, that's the same thing. That is the exact same thing as General Longstreet at the end of Gettysburg going, wait a minute, I've got to get somebody to paint me in front of this cannon because it's such a historical event, this Gettysburg thing. This is insane. And then they promote.
You got to get the soldiers walking back in defeat. As you know, you need to get right there.
We lost. But we got to get some heraldry going here because we were here.
So my point is that Tony Kukolo allowed me, which I'm not sure if I'd be allowed there now, just saying, allowed me to do some teach
None
some
of us is
classes.
teaching a war college class, babe.
Well, look, they used to have my book Dark Heart in clothing sales stores because Tony approved it, because the commandant war college kind of controls a lot of the education stuff for what goes into clothing sales stores. Anyway, my point being, Tony allowed me to talk to senior officers, and I'm pretty blunt with general officers, just saying
I've never
general.
seen that before out of you.
And I said,
side.
basically, look, we have a problem with our system in that we now have a system based on measures of performance that are created artificially. You sit down and you make like 5 points. You write them out and say, if you meet these 5 points, you get promoted. So we have a system based on measures of performance rather than measures of effectiveness. It's like, hey, you actually polished your boots. That's good. You weren't too fat. Your belly wasn't over your belt too much. That's good. Man, oh man, you did not molest the general's driver. That's a big check there. You didn't do that, so that's good. So you do these performance standards, but did you stop the bad guys? Did you win? Did you kill the Taliban? No, you didn't do. But you were making that point, because if you're measuring against measures of effectiveness, were you effective in stopping the Taliban? Were you effective in establishing a bridgehead to move refugees and material out of Afghanistan? Well, you weren't. You failed.
Somewhere
so
in the 90s,
that's on. And so I did a
90s.
class on this, and a lot of, believe it or not, a lot of your peers, not you personally, but I mean, a lot of these guys were pushing back on me saying, well, how else do we measure what we do as a military? It's like, you measure it based on what missions you're given and how effective you are in fulfilling them, not on artificial standards of like, oh, I took a PT test and I passed. Well, any knucklehead can pass a PT test, but not every knucklehead can actually win a battle and persevere in a war with a positive outcome. Well, and I would argue that's part of our system. A part of our system is that we stepped away from effectiveness. Would you agree with that?
A lot of the knuckleheads can now not pass a PT test. That's a different matter.
That's true. That's all those standards have dropped. Yeah.
The thing I will tell you is, let me give you the root ball of what you just said. Somewhere in the 90s, somewhere around WW Kosovo when we were fighting that one, maybe WW Mogadishu in 92. Don't know, but we removed from the dictionary of the U.S. Armed Forces the word victory, because when you remove that word, you don't know where the hell you're going. Yeah. You have no idea where this ends up. So it's just like, I mean, listen, I've thrown so many wonderful paratroopers out of my airplane. And what I'll tell you is, when we plan, because you guys only like half the flight, when we plan to throw you at that DZ, we start at the end point in the planning. We start at the DZ and we look at, this is where the PLFs are happening and all of the HUAs are landing on the DZ, and then we plan our way backwards. Well, in the United States military at the great strategy levels, when we start to look at the geopolitics, the economics, all of the things that are involved, supply chains, logistics, all of that is contributing to this one word that we got rid of out of our dictionary in the 90s called victory. It's all gone. So we have to reinstitute that word. And then if you want measures of effectiveness, you tell me how the measures of effectiveness are contributing to that word called victory. And I remember asking a very, very senior officer that was my boss. Everybody would know who the heck they are. That person is. And I said, what does victory look like? When are we leaving? And when we're leaving, how do we walk away from this saying, haha, we won? Or is that not what we're doing? And I was almost patted on the head about what a simplistic thinker you are. And it's like, no, that's not the case. Because if you go back to those golden moments where the United States military won something, sat on the deck of a Missouri and watched papers being signed, had a guy named Unconditional Surrender Grant, you will find that word victory is extremely helpful. And then defining what those conditions of victory are, and then being able to go to all of your forces, air, land, sea, doesn't matter, and saying, we're going to a place called victory. This is what it looks like. And here's how you all contribute to get to that place. And here's how you'll know it when you see it. It has nothing to do with what's the stock of your favorite defense company trading. It has nothing to do with is Good Feelings NGO going to make a soccer ball factory happen right outside of Herat. It has nothing to do with any of that crap. It's how do you fight and win America's wars? And we, by the way, don't always have to fight them the way that TV portrays us fighting them.
Right.
You know, right now we're in a major, major war, and the sound of that war is dead silence. Why? Because it's electrons flowing through fiber.
Yep. Well, let's talk about that more in a second. I do have to do a quick read real quick right now. So anyway, we're sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. You need to check them out. Paul Stone was on with us yesterday talking about how to strengthen your portfolio and actually achieve your own personal victory. So colonialmetalsgroup.com/Ed-Henry. I hope that's the right website because they sent it to me again yesterday, just saying. 800-805-4034. Call them. Just do the old-fashioned thing. Get the old rotary phone out and call them up. 800-805-4034. Paul explained yesterday the important necessity of actually being prepared using hard currency, gold and silver, as part of what you have in the way of resources. Everything goes well. President Trump gets elected. Things aren't over, kids. It's going to take some time to get everything back in order. You will help yourself and your family by having something that will endure no matter what the economic winds are going. And we talked about this the week before last. Gold and silver have been around since the beginning of civilization, and they're stable. You can't go wrong. So call Paul Stone, Colonial Metals Group, 800-805-4034. You'll thank us later for that. Hey, back to the program. So James and Blaine, I want to ask you both about this. Oh, by the way, just real quick on the issues regarding Hamas and Iran. I got the Jake Sullivan AI tool, Blaine. Did you know that I got a leaked copy of the AI that Jake Sullivan uses to make his predictions and decisions? Did you know that?
No,
it's called.
I thought he was playing with his plastic soldiers.
No, it is. It's called the Jake Sullivan pickle. Let's see what the pickle says today. Pickle, Jake Sullivan's pickle. Do you think the Israelis will be able to take out Hamas later today?
There's really no easy way to say this. No.
Well, there you go. See, Pickle's never wrong. So I guess it's just not the Israeli day, and that's how Jake makes his decisions on a daily basis. Just saying, that's the Jake Sullivan pickle. Pick him up anywhere, you know. And
he's in Wang Yi's principal's office right now in Beijing at Jiangnan High, getting it handed to him.
Oh yeah. Well, it's really interesting that. Do you think he's wearing a gimp suit when he's in that meeting, Blaine? I don't want to get you in trouble. Don't say anything about that. I'll get you in trouble. Well, it would be interesting if he shows up in latex for the meetings.
Yeah. Listen, I would love to be a fly on that wall. That would be amazing because he is going there to lecture the Chinese while he's hat in hand asking for their help. Please stop helping Russia. You're such good friends of us, and we're not going to help you with Taiwan, but please help us with Russia.
And so, yeah, this is where I'm fascinated because there's a lot of folks in Europe who are trying to pretend this is not going on. But at the time we're speaking, within the last 24 hours, there's been another aggressive exchange, a ramming, I believe, of a Philippine Coast Guard ship by the Chinese Coast Guard. And there's a war going on there. I mean, it's like it's low level, it's simmering, but everybody's ignoring the fact that China's becoming aggressive. Everybody pretends China's not becoming aggressive. So to your point, Jake's over there saying, "Oh, please don't be aggressive. I'll wear my gimp suit for you." It's not going to work. But it's like I would argue, and James, I'd like to have you comment on this first, because this administration's been so weak. There's no leverage anywhere. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't. One thing that President Trump had was he had strength on his side and he had respect on his side. I think that in the first maybe 6 months of his presidency, if I remember correctly, some things weren't going right in Afghanistan, and he dropped that I think it's called a Moab bomb.
Moab.
I think that
mother of all bombs. Yes.
Yeah, it's the biggest one outside of nuclear, I believe.
Conventional.
Or something like that.
Biggest conventional bomb. Yeah, it was used during Vietnam to clear out big areas of trees, but There's no treason in Afghanistan, but it did make a point. So
Yeah, I think it drove home a pretty solid point that he's not going to play games and you're going to do what he asks you to do. And the great thing about President Trump is this: is that one, if you don't work a deal with them, you're going to lose big.
yeah,
But he's one of those guys that if you want to work a deal with them, there's a way out for you that it might work a little bit for you. He's
yeah.
as unreasonable as the left tries to make him out to be. That's not what I'm seeing. I see a guy that's unbelievably reasonable if you're willing to work a deal. I mean, the art of the deal. The guy's written a book about how to create deals. I have a cousin that thank goodness, was a crazy liberal. She's come around in the last 4 years. She has had 2 kids in the last couple of years and seen the prices of everything explode. And now her parents don't want her even talking to me. So I really think that, we're in a very, very weird place where there's a lot of, with Tulsi and RFK coming over. I mean, when Trump was, public enemy number 1 from the left for years, but now there's a lot of what I call Kennedy Democrats, reasonable people that we might agree with.
Yeah.
We can sit down at a table and we can have a great discussion about things and just disagree, have different, point of view.
Yeah, James, I was explaining to my son last night, and we're running out of time, but I'll hit you both on this real quick. I explained to my son, it's like, well, the Overton window is moved way to the right. We would have been considered Kennedy Democrats back in 1962 because of what we believe. We believe in free speech. We believe, and so it's really funny. And let me get Blaine on it first. Blaine, I think that we would be considered Kennedy Democrats if we were in 1962. What do you think?
No, there's no question about that.
It's
when
amazing.
I got my military fellowship to the Council on Foreign Relations, if they thought that I was Mr. Wrap myself up in the Constitution and our rights, I don't think I would have gone there. But the assessment of my actions in Kyrgyzstan and how I ran things and what I did got them to, oh, he might be just absolutely one of ours. But now what I find in most of these left-leaning think tanks is the reasonable people have run for the hills because the rabid dogs will bite them.
Oh yeah,
the truth.
No, I know people who are serving. I talk to periodically. I don't want to get that person or those people in trouble, but it's a complete woke mess. And to your point, Blaine, you don't have to worry about taking a PT test anymore. It's like, yeah, you're woke, you're fine.
We'll grade on a curve.
You identify as kind of I don't know, anything from a lesbian to a frog.
Or a llama.
A llama. So, and I do have my gerbil flag here somewhere. People always
Don't do it. Don't do it. No, don't do it.
I know they always get upset.
It'll get mad.
Oh my God, you're going to get to bring up gerbils again. They're innocent. Well, they are innocent. That's my point. Anyway, but anyway, but back to that issue regarding where we are politically. The left is so far left now. Tim Walz makes Mao look like a Boy Scout. I mean, it's and I'm only halfway joking about that because they've tried to take and put this don't you know Menard's shell over Tim Walz. And by God, Blaine, and this is something that's not been explored. That guy's been going to China for the past 30 years and nobody's been tracking him.
Most of them with a secret security clearance. And let me tell you something. Tim Walz, he's not a Kool-Aid drinker. He's a Kool-Aid mixer. He believes in this stuff. And if you look at it, if he sees the virtue in the Cultural Revolution. He has a wedding anniversary that he planned to be on the anniversary of Tiananmen Square because he thought they had it coming. So he is a pre-Cultural Revolution of his own Maoist who has actually burned down his first American city.
Literally. Yeah, we were talking about Minneapolis earlier, and I loved the old Minneapolis with
but we all need to mind our own business.
Yeah.
Mind your own damn business.
I'll burn down my city if I want.
Well, that's my point. We got to wrap it up here, but I think that's where we have to be smarter than the average bear and recognize that the Harris Waltz ticket is literally a ticket for what can we call it? Stalin Mao, the Stalin Mao ticket, the Harris.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I like that. I'm going to
Yes,
go to
the
work on the
Stalin Mao takeover.
uniforms for my AI graphics that I like to do.
Yeah, I think yeah, with all the nice Mao jackets.
Yeah.
Because it's it, but that's what it is. I mean, she's more Stalinist because she's an apparatchik. She learned how to use the powers of government for political advantage, much like Stalin. But Timmy's a true believer. He believes in this cultural Marxism. It's necessary to reshape society. So that's going to be interesting because those philosophies did not coexist well together, right, Blaine? I mean, we could go into a whole history lesson here, which we don't have time to do. But
oh no, for the next show. But I will tell you
we
one
should-
thing: there is a difference between the Cultural Revolution of China and the United States today, and that is the Second Amendment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
Don't
are
ever forget.
deterred, Kamala and Waltz. I would not go down onto Main Street saying "Eat crickets" and here's a new shot.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important for people to understand that Kamala says that Bidenomics are working, and damn y'all if you don't believe it. Apparently, that's her kind of philosophy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Then you're spreading misinformation. So says Mark Zuckerberg. Oh, Zuckerberg doesn't say that anymore because we're in the season of cover your butt.
I know. It's like, oh, maybe Trump's going to win. I better get back on the good side
get on
here.
sides.
Like maybe it's time to change sides.
Yep.
So, well, it's interesting. He does look like Mr. Data, from Star Trek, like Lieutenant Data.
Thought that for
Maybe he's not real.
He's not real,
Alien.
So, all right. Well, speaking of aliens, I got to let everybody go. So, James, thank you for being here. Again, tell us where to find your flags.
YourAmericanFlagStore.com. We've got a
There you
flag
go.
there to represent
That's easy.
everybody.
Get one today.
All right, good. Today, do the right thing.
I'd love to. I'd
Jump
love
in there
to
and grab
send you both one, by the way.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. Well, it would be displayed here in my stage, my whatever you want to call this thing. This is actually my office. I always joke, but I'm actually sitting at my desk. I'm looking outside on the Albemarle Sound across my yard. I have one of the best offices in the world. So anyway, and I have the best guests in the world. So James, thank you for being here. Blaine, my dear friend, I always enjoy our conversations. And man, oh man, it's just such interesting times. I think we're going to have a lot more to talk about. So thank you both for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure.
And so I will close out the show now. We will be back next Monday. Yeah, I think that's the plan. Chris will be back from Ed McMahon, the Ed McMahon School of Sidekicks. I think they've got a couple of events left to do the rest of the week. I think they've actually got. I think everything involves drinking with them. I think they've got to do Jack Daniels and Jello shots on Hollywood Boulevard, which should be interesting. I guess you've got to go through drink shots and Jello shots and somehow not get mugged while being on Hollywood Boulevard in LA. That's a tough one. That's going to be a tough one. Let's hope he survives that. But Chris will be back. We'll see you back on a Monday. And then I'm hoping that Karen will be back. Thank you for the eye candy comments. Yes, thank you. Loves Christ. I love you all too. You're wonderful. And we'll have another great show with other great guests. I've been asked to try to get a surprise guest by our sponsor, by Paul. I'll see if I can get her. It's a her. She's been in the news lately. I can't guarantee anything, but we'll see if I can try to bring her on. It would be interesting. So anyway, God bless you all. You're wonderful. We look forward to helping you start your day. Wake up, Patriots. Always fun. And we'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.